Hello, everyone. Welcome to this week's episode of At the Boundary, a podcast from the Global and National Security Institute at the University of South Florida. I'm Jim Cardoso, Senior Director at GNSI, and your host for At the Boundary. Today on the podcast, we'll be talking with GNSI Research Fellow Dr. Armand Mahmoudian. You've been hearing him a lot on the podcast recently with his interviews of Nadwa Al-Dawsari and David Kramer. However, today we're putting him on the other side of the mic as we'll be discussing a new research initiative he's leading for GNSI. Before we begin our discussion with Armand, however, I want to remind you about an upcoming event. Mark the date, June 23rd on your calendar. GNSI will host a live-streamed and international research forum, joining our leading thinkers from USF with experts and scientists from the University of Paris-Saclay to discuss the most pressing cyber and security challenges faced by the global community. We'll present 3 panels over a 4-hour live stream on our YouTube channel, morning for Tampa, afternoon for Paris. Registration information will be available soon, along with full speaker and agenda details. Watch our socials and website for the updates. We also want to pass along congratulations to our own Dr. Jeff Rogg, Senior Research Fellow at GNSI. His new book, The Spy and the State, The History of American Intelligence, will be published June 2nd. The U.S. intelligence community is more powerful than ever, but also more vulnerable than it's been in decades. Jeff's book answers questions about the past, but poses new questions for the future of U.S. civil intelligence relations. We'll have him on the podcast to discuss his book and the research that went into it. It's a great read, and you can pre-order it now from all your favorite book sources. Okay, I'm now happy to welcome back into the studio one of the other research fellows here at GNSI, Dr. Armand Mahmoudian. His area of specialty is the Middle East with focus on the Iran-Russia relationship. He's written numerous articles for outlets like The National Interest and is a frequent contributor to the BBC. He earned his PhD in politics and international relations last year, right here at USF. And in addition to his research work, he's teaching at the USF Juni Genshaft Honors College. Armand, welcome to the guest position on At the Boundary.
Thank you. It's a nice spot to be on. I appreciate it.
The pressure's on you more now. You still have to, you got to answer. You got to, come back with the good answers to the questions here. You don't run the conversation. You respond.
Yeah, let's hope for it.
Okay. It'll work out well. Okay. You're leading a new research initiative for us here at GNSI. It's called the Axis of Resistance. Can you give us an overview of the initiative before we start drilling down to a little more of the detail? That includes, the definition of the axis of resistance. I mean, some listening may go, oh, I know exactly what that is, but others may have only heard that term for the first time.
Thank you. That's a good question. Actually, I would like to take advantage of the opportunity to kind of explain about the initiative, for which I owe a great deal of depth to you, to the rest of the GNSI's leadership, including Dr. Oakley. So I want to begin with the second part of the question. What is the axis of resistance? After the Islamic Republic's revolution of the 1979 in Iran, we faced a new Iran, which was basically a revisionist Iran, meaning an Iran which was trying to change the regional order in the Middle East in its favor. But the Iranians were very much aware of the fact that they do not have the conventional capability, the military might, to change that. So they pursued unconventional, the hybrid, which can include various aspects. Some of them is a nuclear weapon, some of them is other unconventional method of warfare. Some of them are hybrid warfare, including use of proxies, which brings the axis of resistance. Iranian wanting to change the order of the Middle East, but were realistic enough, they cannot directly change the order. So what they did is that instead of physically and directly getting involved in the countries in the region, they started a sponsoring group across the region. The groups that ideologically or demographically speaking were aligned with them. So basically they started communities who were either Shia or radical Sunni, shared a sentiment against the United States. They began in Iraq by sponsoring in 1980, right after the revolution, the Iraqi Shia group, the Supreme Council, and then in 1981 by sponsoring Shia Lebanese, which later in 1983 turned to the Hezbollah, establishing alliance with the Alawite regime of Assad's household in Syria in 1980s. And by 1990s, 1995, for all of a sudden in Middle East, we face a coalition of a state, which is primarily Iran, and non-state actors, including Hezbollah in Lebanon, Iraqi Shias, which after the fall of the Saddam in 2003 take over, and later on the Bahrainian Shias, and after the Arab Spring in 2011, the Houthis and the movement in Yemen. This coalition today is named Axis of Resistance, which that's the name that they actually proclaim for themselves, which basically means their desire to resist against what they call American hegemony in the region or American aggression. Now, back to the first part of your question, what does this initiative do? So the overall goal of ours is that to first discuss or explore why Iran wants that, what's the role of this network of proxies in Iran's national security and foreign policy, and aside that, how Iran operates this network. Because we are not talking about one country, one front, one region. There is about 5 to 6 different countries that Axis of Resistance are operational and functional in it. And in each region, Lebanon, Syria, Iraq, Yemen, it functions quite differently and to some extent independently, which we will get into it during our initiative. So that's our goal, to explore it. What is it, how it works, and why we should take a look at it.
And leading off with Iran, of course. I mean, it's an axis. It's multiple countries. It's multiple proxies. But obviously, Nick, I think the first thing you'll do, event or whatever, is going to be focused on Iran.
Yes, the first panel is going to be on Iran. I'm glad that you brought it up. So the initiative would kind of appear within 6 months. We are planning to start in May, and the ending would be in September. In each month, we are going to have one virtual panel is going to be accessible to all of our audience, publicly accessible. In each panel, we are going to bring 2 to 3 panelists. The panelists are those who have academic background, or they've been former officials. And one of the things that we are kind of keen to do is that we are also trying to bring panelists who are originally from the targeted community. So when we talk about Iran, in our Iran panel, we have 1 or 2 Iranian American individuals. When we talk about the Iraq, our Iraq panel, which is the second panel, we have 1 or 2 Iraqi American individuals, which we think is kind of, it brings a fresh air to the think tank environment, to generally speaking Middle East aspects, in let's say the studies sphere, which brings, we try to combine the way that we see the developments here with the way that they see the developments here, there in their home. And I think that's a kind of, brings a very unique perspective to the table.
Well, yeah, when we did the Afghanistan conference, I remember in the lead up to that, so one of the things we talked about is let's not pull in a bunch of Americans to talk about Afghanistan. Let's imagine this. Let's try to bring in some Afghans to talk about Afghanistan. And I think we're successful in doing that as well, or at least people with a long history, or maybe Afghan Americans, that had that cultural connection to be able to talk more deeply about the issue.
That is true. I think one of the things that in GNSI we should take a pride on it, and we are humble enough not to brag that we don't.
We can brag a little bit. It's okay.
Brag a lot. Yes, we are quite good on going out of the traditional means of analysis. We bring diverse people. We bring also people with a military background, with the intelligence background, who have a tendency to see the issues differently, and in most cases quite practically. So I think that's one of the things in GNSI we are trying to take a pride in it, and in Axis of Resistance initiative, we are also very well determined to continue that path and pattern of our work.
No, that's great. Timing is always important. Middle East has been turbulent for as long as anyone can remember. I think it's a fair guess to say will probably continue to be for the foreseeable future. So why is now the right time for this type of study?
Well, as you said, Middle East is always a hot topic, which is both fortunate and unfortunate. It's not quite fortunate for the people who live in the Middle East, but right now the timing is quite unique. And I understand, people are used to hear that right now the time for Middle East is unique, but this time is really unique.
Okay, and you're going to tell us why. I'm going to look forward to this.
There are a couple of things that's happening. One of them is the state of Iran's relation with the United States. The Iranian and Americans' relation has reached to the point that I think in the field of Iran or Middle East studies, everyone agrees upon the fact that the current status quo of no war, no peace, no longer can continue over Iran's nuclear project. Because Iran is so close to fully weaponize its program that the United States is going to either accept it, which is very unlikely, or going to use military options, which seems to be also relatively likely, or reach a deal with the Iranian, which middle way, which I think it's the option that everybody hopes for it. But we don't know which one is the most likely. But what is determined, the current circumstance is no longer survivable. Something is going to happen with Iran. Something big is going to happen. And I think we are getting the news. The second thing is that the matter of the Israeli-Hamas conflict. We are getting into the second year of the war. The question of what is happening to the future of the Gaza, what is happening to the future of the security of the Israel in the region, what would happen to the normalization of the Arab-Israeli relations, which President Trump began in his first administration. They are all now hot topics, and it seems we are reaching a critical stage. The third issue, which makes the timing even more essential, is the matter of Syria. We have a new regime in Syria. In December 2024, a new regime came up. Frankly, we don't know much, these people, those who are in charge. We have some idea about their previous affiliation. We are hearing some claims or witnessing some gestures from them now. But it's quite hard to really read their mind. They are new. They might be new friends. They might be new foes. We don't know. I'm not the most optimistic or the most skeptical person when it comes to the new administration in Syria. But I think it deserves a great deal of attention.
Yeah, seems like there's a lot of hopes with Syria, but there's not as much real hard information about what's next for real. Yeah. So, and it is a dynamic time. One thing on the Iran piece, you talk about sort of I wouldn't say parity, but Iran is in a position that it can be challenging. But on the opposite end of that, I mean, the past year has been, and we've actually talked about this, it's been to quote an old book, the no good, very bad, horrible year for Iran. So how does so walk me through that a little bit. You kind of talk, like I said, you talk about a parity, but now really they're someone could say they're in a very weak position. So how is that, and how do they get in such a position they can almost challenge the U.S. to really change the status quo?
It's an excellent point, and I remember the conversation, and I stole the idea. I used it in my speech, but to be fair, I also mentioned the idea being presented to me by my boss, which is you.
who got it from a book, a children's book that was written years ago, yes.
Well, but still I didn't get the book, or I didn't get the idea. So, one of the things that I realize in studying history is that whenever your foes are in the weak position, they can be the most dangerous one. They can be also reasoned quite easily, but they also can be very dangerous. It goes either way.
It's the cornered animal concept. The cornered animal is at its most dangerous.
Exactly. And 2024 was awful year for Iranian. They lost Assad. Hamas was to great extent harmed and dismantled. I don't want to say fully, but to great extent. Hezbollah has received a great deal of blow from the Israelis. We don't know they can recover. We really don't. They can recover some of it, portionally, but fully adopt that, specifically speaking in absence of the Syria. And when you look at Iran's national security, you would notice that Syria and Hezbollah used to play a primary role in Iran's national security. Yeah. They were tools of projection of power for Iranians.
They were their main players.
Exactly.
In outward projection, yeah.
So now that they are not in the equation, if you were Ayatollah Khamenei, which I'm glad you're not.
So many ways I can react to that, but I'll just let it sit there. Yeah,
personally, I left the country for a reason. So
this is much better. Yeah.
So if you were him, you would think, so I have two options to survive in the hostile circumstances that I have only myself to blame. I triggered that conflict with Israel and United States. Either I have to yield or surrender or to give in to the Americans' request, or I have to build up my power. I don't have the economy. I don't have the access to the armed defense industry, global armed defense to build up conventional. And I don't have my proxies anymore. So what other options I would have to establish a deterrence. The only option that the Iranians have today is weaponizing their nuclear program if they want to continue the escalation pattern. If they want to de-escalate, that's always the option of deal. But there is a question do they have the political willingness to make the compromise? Because the current administration wants them to pay a cost and make a great deal of compromise. All of these together makes this year very crucial because Iran has passed the enrichment of the uranium more than 60%. In order then for you or any country to have a nuclear weapon, you need to be able to enrich uranium 92%. Iran is at the threshold of 60%. On paper, it seems Iran has still 32% to go. But technically, and we had an event about that on Iran, we brought people from the Nuclear Arms Association. They talk about it. Once you reach the threshold of 60% of the enrichment of uranium, you've got 90% of job done for building a nuclear weapon. So Iran is almost there. So they either are going to make it or they are not going to make it. But whatever would happen, 2025 would be the year that the fate of Iran's nuclear program would be clear or determined.
We could drop into a rabbit hole on the Iran nuclear program by itself. So we're just gonna continue. But again, I think that's going to be part of some of the things you'll be discussing as this whole research program moves forward over the next few months. What are your goals overall for the program? Who do you see who benefits from the insights that you're going to gain?
So if you go the way that we are trying to put the panels together, we are bringing a combination or coalition of experts who some of them are academicians, some of them are former practitioners, which is a big thing for us. For the GNSI, we are focusing on the former practitioners, and also we try to train the future one, which is Dr. Jeff Rogg, who's the program is working on it. Some of them are people from the think tanks. So one of the things that we are trying to kind of achieve is we try to present a sort of a perspective or view on the Middle East and axis of resistance particularly, in which is not only theoretically, but also have practical, technical, and does provide a grasp of what is happening actually on the field. And that's one of the things. And we are not only also moving forward with the panels. In many of these months, we are going to have a special episode of podcasts. We are going to have also one-on-one talks with the different individuals. And we are also planning or hoping, or at the end of this program, we will be able, which I'm quite certain we will be able, given the resources that we have here at the GNSI, to publish either a research paper or decision paper, which kind of is going to be something accessible to a lay reader or average citizens or common citizens. I don't want to sound elitist. I mean people who are not working for the federal government.
But have an interest in national security. Kind of want to know what's happening now, what's happening next.
Exactly. Would brief them, would update them, and also would be very quite useful for people who actually work in the establishment. And in one way or another, they make an impact on the decision making. I think we are trying to brief them from a very diverse channel, which gives them a quite comprehensive view on the axis of resistance.
So, and you talk about the resource GNSI, but you're going to also leverage, I believe, the resources across USF as well. And yes. USF has some pretty impressive resources of its own. I think in Iran, especially, I believe one of our guests or participants will be
Dr. Milani.
Dr. Milani, yes. Who's your mentor and your basically made you what you are today, right? Yes. To a certain extent. So, and he's a friend of GNSI in many ways too.
Well, first of all, for his sake, I wouldn't say that he's what made me.
In case he's listening, yeah. Okay.
Yeah. No, I'm not quite sure he would be happy or take this as a compliment. But yes, he's my mentor. He's my. I had a great father, but in academic sense, he's the closest thing that I can have a father, but I have no intention to have a second father.
No, I don't think you need to do that.
No. But he's, we talk, and he gave me the privilege and the pleasure to accept to have a podcast with me. And the plan that I have is that the first podcast that we are going to launch in the Axis of Resistance is going to be a podcast with Dr. Milani. going to be an interview with him. He is not only one of the pillar or institution of the USF and the director of the Center for Strategic and Diplomatic Studies, but in the field of Middle East studies, universally speaking, Dr. Mohsen Milani is one of the Iran experts. We are very much lucky, University of South Florida, lucky to have him. So we are going to have that at the beginning. That's how it's going to start. And the end of the program, once the program is concluded.
Hold that thought on the end. We're going to talk about that. Okay, but I didn't want to talk about
I don't want to spoil it.
No, I didn't want to talk about that. Sure. And I'm sure Dr. Milani, he did just publish his own book, which I'm about a third of the way through now. And it's excellent. I mean, really, the knowledge he has is just, and really to lay the groundwork as well. And he's kind of walking me through history as well to leading up to why things are the way they are now, which a lot of people just say, oh, Iran's always been that way. Well, no, it hasn't. Yeah. Okay. It's things change over history. So I really look forward to that podcast and that discussion. Now, we'll hold off on the question about what's at the end, but you did spread this research out over 6 months. Yeah. And so, we talked a little bit offline about the timing, and there's a reason why you're doing that. Could you explain that a bit? Yeah,
the reason that, in most cases, I mean, all of the institutes, they have most of the think tanks, they have a tendency to have 1 or 2 day event, which I really don't blame them. And I actually see it as a positive thing. They try to kind of utilize the access they have to the audience and the resources and tries to, within a 2 day or 1 day or 1 afternoon, they present something, which is quite good and quite worthy. But the thing about the Middle East is that the pace of changes or developments in Middle East is just uncatchable. We talked earlier before this podcast that if you had a 3 day or 1 week event on October 6th of 2023, the day after the ending of your event, that event wouldn't do anything.
Everything from that is almost worthless.
Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, because things change in Middle East. Mm-hmm. And, to make the matters worse, in October 7th, we thought, we are entering a new stage. And then in December 2024, Bashar Assad, who literally won 13 years of the civil war, loses the power. Within 11 days.
Completely unexpected.
Yeah. Within 11 days. So the guy survived 13 years of civil war, but cannot hold on the power for 11 days. What we're trying to do, and I don't want to jinx it, is we are trying to spread this initiative on the axis of resistance within 6 months in order to at least partially catch up with the pace of developments and changes in the region. Mm-hmm. Because it's an ongoing thing. In 6 months, we can keep updating our audience on one hand what is happening and update our program, update our discussions with the latest development. That's the goal. I mean, who knows, maybe Middle East for all of a sudden turns to be the most boring region on the face of Earth.
I don't think that's going to happen. History says that's not going to happen. No, I think Middle East scholars such as yourself will have plenty to talk about for the next 6 months and the next 6 years and even time beyond that. So what, is there like what's driving this line of research for you? I mean, what, is there any, besides the obviously the analysis and the outcomes to, contribute to the scholastic and intellectual knowledge out there, is there anything is this something you've always wanted to do, or is it just an idea you came up with in the last month or so to do this? Or is this kind of a realization of something you've always wanted to set in motion, this type of study?
It is something that I always wanted to do, to be frank. I wouldn't say necessarily in that shape, because it was a kind of an idea that I had, but I never get to materialize it. So I never really worked the framework of it. So, but it's something that I very much was interested in it. And the reason that I was interested in it some of it is a personal and professional. I dedicated a good chunk of my academic life. I'm still very young, but I dedicated a good chunk of that to studying the axis of resistance. So it's a topic that to me is very interesting. I mean, my mother one time made a joke and said that you could have ended up by having expertise in studying Western Europe, Switzerland, France, Germany, and then you would spend time over there.
Which is,
but you choose different places. Mm-hmm. It's fine, it's fair. But why we are doing it like this is that while I found a great deal of benefit in having events, in having one day afternoons, one single panels on studying axis of resistance. I don't quite believe that when it comes to the axis of resistance, we should only study axis of resistance as an entity. It is an entity. It is a coalition. But we are dealing with different actors that while they are getting a sponsorship from Iran, they are not necessarily taking an order from the Iran. During my dissertation, which is a good chunk of it is on the axis of resistance, I get the pleasure, which I still owe it to you actually, to interview General Mackenzie. And we went through Iran's relationship with the Hezbollah. He told me something once that it really stayed with me, stuck with me. I mean, and I think it is the most accurate analysis that one can say about the Iranian and Hezbollah's relations. He told me that if Iran tomorrow orders Hezbollah to move from this region to that region, they would do it. But if Iran orders Hezbollah to die for Iran, Hezbollah wouldn't do it. And the response that he said that Hezbollah is not Iran's tool. Gets influenced by Iran, but has survival instinct and other desire and incentives, which kind of gives it an autonomy, a relative autonomy. Mm-hmm. So quote unquote, Hezbollah is a junior partner of Iran, as Houthis, as many of others, these, militias. And that's why I always believe when it comes to the axis of resistance, while you should do a study as an entity, which we are doing on the first panel, mm-hmm. you also need to study them individually, independently, and separately, which is something that I always wanted to do, and I'm trying to take advantage of the opportunity right now.
Well, and it's kind of funny to me too, because when we in GNSI we talked about, and with our resident fellows here, if they had any ideas for lines of research they wanted to do, you were the first one out of the gate. So that's why I just have this feeling that this is something that's been percolating in there for a while, and I'm really looking forward to seeing it evolve completely and see what the end state is. It's going to be very exciting.
Well, I was the first one because the other one, Jeff, was publishing a book with the Oxford.
Everybody was busy with stuff too.
They had better stuff
People
to do.
Was busy, but still, I think this seems like it's something that's like this didn't just materialize in the last day or two. It's kind of been fed by a pursuit over a longer time. So as we get this thing started, we kind of already talked about why we want to start with Iran, and that makes sense. Do you have any notable speakers or panelists or personalities that you're pulling in for this that you want to highlight for the folks listening?
Well, I would be one of the people who speaks.
Beyond you, I mean, all of which pale to you compared to you, of course, but others that are coming in.
We have General Mackenzie, hopefully. I mean, we have Dr. Milani, hopefully. But I want to, also put it here that the schedules change for everyone. Mm-hmm. They have all better stuff to do. So some of the names for now, I don't want to jinx it, so I don't want to kind of mention it. But there are names that I think I'm very much proud and grateful to them to accept this. To be a part of us. One of them is Mr. Alan Ayer. He's a former spokesperson of the United States State Department, comes with a very interesting background. He actually lived in Iran during Shah's regime. He spent part of his childhood in Iran, south of Iran, and that's why he speaks Farsi. And during President Obama's negotiation with Iran in 2014 and 15 over the nuclear deal, he was actually on and off a part of team. He was a U.S. diplomat. He's a veteran diplomat. And he has a unique understanding of Iran. I mean, he goes on podcasts to talk about Iranian poetry and translate the old Iranian poetry to the today's Farsi.
He understands the culture much better too, which is challenging, but it can be so much of a benefit to an overall understanding of the national security implications.
We have that. We have Nadwa Al-Aswari, which just had a podcast with her. On Yemen, which I
enjoyed thoroughly. That was a great podcast, I thought.
Yeah, except the part that I was talking so slow.
You were very quiet and measured. Yes, there's no doubt about that. You're more energetic today, and I'm liking it.
It's because of coffee.
That's right. Keep the coffee. Shout out to Buddy Brew here at USF. Yeah. There you go.
Yeah. Shout out to them. Hopefully we get a discount for the next one for the free advertisement. And Nadwa is an authority when it comes on speaking about Yemen. She doesn't only study Yemen; she lived through it. She is an amazing person. I was fascinated to see a female scholar coming out and talking about a region that has one of the most Yemen suppressing mechanism against the woman on daily basis. And it was a great pleasure. I'm very much honored to have her on a Yemen panel, but I think these are the names that so far I'm going to say. I'm going to
understand.
discuss.
Yes, I understand. You want to because you don't know. We when we do our conferences and events, people they want to come, they commit, and sometimes things just happen. Yeah. It's just the way it is. So we'll backtrack. We're starting to wind down our podcast here. Now we'll go back to General McKenzie. So your final event of the research series does involve bringing in retired General Frank McKenzie. He's the executive director of GNSI. He's also the former commander of Central Command as well. Why is it important to you to wrap up this way?
Well, I think when it comes to the studying, whenever I go to an event, and I think at GNSI, we actually are doing a great job about it. But when I go to most of the think tanks event is that you would see a good number of people talking about the Middle East. And not to, I don't want to evaluate them in any manner, but most of them never actually carry the burden of the work in the Middle East. Like me. Mm-hmm. I'm an academician. I talk about the Middle East, but how many days I fought in the Middle East? How many days I've worked in the Middle East? So I can say on my behalf, while I'm making a living.
You did live there and you did grow up there. Yeah,
so. That's endurance. I can tell that I personally didn't really engage in building or development of the Middle East and risk many things in it. Mm-hmm. At the GNSI, we are trying kind of make this gap a bit lesser. And that's why we bring many people with a military or intelligence background. These are the people who put their life at the risk to change or at least try to turn the tide of the affairs in the Middle East over. And when it comes to the General McKenzie, I think we have a very unique opportunity. And I'm not saying this because he is the boss of the bosses at the GNSI. I'm saying that because he's not only a military guy, he's not only a commander, he's a person when you talk with him, he knows Middle East. He knows Iran. And when those of the audiences who read his book, Melting Point, they would know that he has a very unique understanding of the Middle East that I really wish most of the US officials had. Mm-hmm. And I think that's a good place to wrap up, that he's a good person and right person to wrap up, because not only he knows Middle East in terms of literature and academic studies, he knows Middle East because he worked on it. He was on the field, he put his life on the risk, and he knows the region from a very, very close distance.
Yeah. So, and I shout out to the book, The Melting Point. It is on sale out there at your favorite book locations or Amazon or whatever. And it actually, in the 6 months as you go through this research project, I would tell listeners, if you haven't read it yet, I would say pick it up. It's not a long read. It's not overly militaristic or too many military terms that can be understood by anyone. And I think that it provides some insight. Yeah, I think there may be some insights from some folks that would surprise them, the way he approaches it. So I look forward to seeing that as a summary there as well. Any final thoughts as on this whole research program or anything else as we wrap up the podcast?
Well, the final thought is that it's a very we are getting into a very competitive business or field of study. Axis of resistance, Middle East is a hot topic. And I'm quite confident many people out there are doing a great job. Over here, we are trying to also do a good job. And we have a high standards at the GNSI. And I think I want to be honest with our audience that I can guarantee you that we are doing our best, at least, that what we present worth your time. And I really look forward to it. And I want to offer my sincere gratitude to colleagues at the GNSI, from the marketing, from the leadership, the fellow program, for their support. And I do look forward to it. Thank you.
And we do as well. And I think everybody listening should as well. You'll hear more to come on our socials. You'll hear it. Future podcast episodes we'll do, and also on our YouTube as well. So just want to say thank you for your time, Armand.
Thank you. Pleasure is mine.
I want to give a special thanks to our guest today, Dr. Armand Mahmoudian. He's a research fellow here at GNSI and doing terrific work in his areas of expertise, Middle East and Russia. We've been talking today about a new research initiative he'll be leading here at GNSI called the Axis of Resistance. Next week on At the Boundary, we're going to focus on the global competition for critical natural minerals and resources. Our guest will be Dr. Vlado Vivoda, a distinguished scholar and researcher at the University of Queensland in Australia. As the threat of global trade wars rises and falls on almost a daily basis, the scarcity of critical resources will play a key role in future relations between the U.S., our allies, and adversaries. That's next week. Thanks for listening today. If you like the podcast, please subscribe and let your friends and colleagues know. You can follow GNSI on our LinkedIn and X accounts at USF_GNSI. Check out our website as well at usf.edu/GNSI. While you're there, don't forget to subscribe to our monthly newsletter. That's going to wrap up this episode of At the Boundary. Each new episode will feature global and national security issues we found to be insightful, intriguing, maybe controversial, but overall just worth talking about. I'm Jim Cardoso, and we'll see you at the Boundary.